It's funny how even the most perfect systems can have a hidden flaw. And sometimes that relentless push for perfection, for the ultimate in comfort and speed, well, it can actually mask a weakness so deep it leads to absolute catastrophe. Today, we're going to break down the story of the Eshkade train disaster, a day when one of the safest rail systems in the entire world suffered a truly perfect failure. So, picture this. It's a totally normal morning on IC 884, a high-speed train zipping from Munich to Hamburg. Inside, you've got 287 passengers just settling in for the ride. People are sipping coffee, chatting, watching the German countryside blur past at 200 kilometers an hour. Everything is exactly, and I mean exactly as it should be. That's a direct quote from a passenger, George Dittman, who was sitting right there in the first coach. Imagine that. One second you're on a routine trip, and the next, a jagged piece of metal just erupts through the floor. That violent intrusion, that was just the very beginning of one of the deadliest high-speed rail accidents in history. To really get our heads around how this all happened, we have to see it unfold from the perspective of the people on that train. It was a terrifying, lightning-fast chain reaction that took just a few seconds to play out. Okay, let's trace this absolute cascade of chaos. It all kicks off when a wheel rim just shatters. A piece of it starts dragging along the track, sparking and scraping for 3 whole kilometers, all while the train is at full speed. Then, as the train rockets towards the town of Eshkade, that piece of metal snags a track switch, flipping it at the absolute worst possible moment. The back half of a carriage is suddenly yanked onto a different track, sending it careening sideways directly into the pillars of a huge concrete bridge. The impact is just catastrophic. The bridge starts to crumble right as the rest of the train plows into the wreckage. When the dust finally settles and the rescue workers clear the scene, the death toll stands at 101. The force of this crash is almost impossible to imagine. A 300-ton bridge collapsed right on top of 2 of the train cars, crushing them down to a height of just 6 inches. And to make a horrifying situation even worse, the train's pressure-proof windows, which were supposed to be a safety feature, made it incredibly difficult for rescuers to get to the people trapped inside. So this was the question on everyone's mind. How on earth did this happen? The Intercity Express, the ICE, was this huge symbol of German engineering. It was considered one of the safest ways to travel on the planet. To find the answer, we've got to go back to how this train was created in the first place. All right, back in the 1980s, high-speed rail was the future. Japan had its famous Shinkansen, the bullet train, and all of Europe was in a race to build their own. Germany's entry into this race, well, it was a true technological marvel. The ICE was the absolute pinnacle of train tech at the time. It was sleek, aerodynamic, controlled by modern computers, and it promised a journey that wasn't just unbelievably fast, but also super comfortable, and most importantly, safe. But deep inside this perfect system, a tiny, seemingly insignificant problem was about to lead to a truly fatal decision. And what's so fascinating, and ultimately just tragic about this whole story, is that the thing that set the stage for disaster wasn't a safety issue. It was an issue of comfort. The problem was all in the wheels. So the original ICE trains used what's called a monoblock wheel. It's a super simple idea, just one big, solid piece of forged steel. It's incredibly strong, it's simple, it's reliable, but at super high speeds, tiny little imperfections from wear and tear could create an imbalance. Passengers started complaining about vibrations, glasses and forks are rattling around in the dining car. It wasn't dangerous at all, just kind of annoying. So, to solve this vibration problem, engineers came up with a new design, the resilient wheel. Think of it like a wheel within a wheel, with a thick rubber damper sandwiched between the outer steel tire and the inner hub. And it worked. It worked beautifully. The ride was smooth as silk. But, and this is a huge but, it introduced a deadly flaw. That same rubber damper that soaked up the annoying vibrations also soaked up the dangerous ones. It completely masked the telltale signs of a wheel that was cracking under immense pressure. Now, this is the part of the story that's really tough to swallow. This catastrophic failure did not happen in a vacuum. The warning signs were there, plain as day, but they were just ignored. Again and again. Just look at this timeline. It is a devastating chain of human error. Warnings were coming from all over the place. For years, a research institute raised a red flag way back in 1992. 5 years later, a city tram company using similar wheels at much lower speeds found dangerous cracks and told the National Railway. The warning was dismissed. And maybe most damning of all, the exact wheel that eventually failed had been flagged for problems 8 different times and was never, ever replaced. So you're probably asking, how did they miss these cracks? Well, get this. Even though they had crack detection machines available, the maintenance crews were just doing visual inspections with a flashlight. Why? Because the company thought the advanced machines gave too many false alarms. They basically chose convenience over caution. And in doing that, they let a ticking time bomb just keep on rolling down the tracks. So when the investigation was all said and done, it revealed the terrifying physics behind what actually caused that wheel to fail. Okay, think about this. Every single day, that steel wheel was rotating 500,000 times at extreme speeds, and every single one of those rotations caused the metal to compress and expand, just a tiny little bit. Over millions and millions of cycles, this process creates microscopic cracks. It's a phenomenon called metal fatigue. And day by day, completely hidden by that rubber damper, those tiny cracks just grew and grew until the steel tire simply couldn't take the force anymore, and it just disintegrated. In the aftermath, the changes were swift and they were sweeping. The flawed resilient wheels were immediately ripped out and replaced across the entire ICE fleet with the original, reliable monoblock design. They reevaluated the infrastructure, redesigning bridges near track switches. They even fitted the windows with designated braking points to help with any future rescues. The Eshede disaster became a mandatory case study for engineers all over the world, a permanent, tragic lesson in the dangers of complacency. The story of Eshede really is a chilling reminder, isn't it? It forces us to ask a really fundamental question about the technology we rely on every single day. In our relentless pursuit of perfection, a smoother ride, a quieter cabin, a more comfortable experience, we have to remember the compromises we might be making. And we always have to ask, when does a brilliant fix become a fatal flaw?